Welcome to Simple Answers with Dr. Z, a question and answer podcast produced by New Beginnings Assembly of God to help bring clarity and grow your relationship with Christ. If you have a question that you would like to have discussed by Dr. Stephen Zemanek and the team, please submit it to simpleanswerswithdrz@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope this podcast blesses you.
Welcome into another edition of Simple Answers with Dr. Z. I'm Travis Green. I'm the youth pastor at New Beginnings Assembly of God. This is a New Beginnings Assembly of God production. Before we introduce our fine people behind the scenes, let's introduce the people on the stage. We got, to my far left, Randy Green, the most holy reverend.
Most holy.
And then we have Dr. Stephen Zemanek.
Far less holy.
This podcast is named after him, Dr. Z. And once again, it's a pretty simple concept here on Simple Answers with Dr. Z. You can email us. That's at simpleanswerswithdrz@gmail.com, or everybody's favorite, we can say it together, tinyurl.com/simple answers.
One day we'll have a medium one.
with Dr. Z. That's how you can reach us. And guys, we got some anonymous submissions from that. So thank you for turning those in. And that's where we're going to start. We're actually going to start with an anonymous question from our tiny URL. This one, once again, comes from anonymous. What does it exactly entail, and how does it look to honor my parents? And what if my parent is toxic? Dr. Z, as always, we're going to give you the honors to tackle this one.
To destroy God's word on the internet. That's great. Let me just say this as a disclaimer. I don't know you, and I don't know your parents, and so what I'm offering is far more generic than it would be if I were your pastor, and I would encourage you to find some time to talk with your pastor who knows you. If you're not involved in a church, this would be a great reason to find a church so that you can get engaged with people who know you, be able to help you. However, there is some great news for you. When the Bible, in both Old and New Testament, talks about honoring your father and your mother, it has nothing to do with liking them. Now, I like my parents. In fact, today's my father's 77th birthday, so I called him and talked to him. Talk to him every year because I'm a good son. So I have good parents. I like my parents, but I know, like many people, a number of folks who have very toxic parents, whether it had because of being narcissistic or addictions that they have, or just bad parenting that they were raised with that they've carried on. And they do a lot of damage to us as kids. And so we're then told by God, commanded by God, not suggested or encouraged, to honor our father and our mother. So what in the world does that mean? At the root of it, the word honor has to do with more than just respect. It actually has to do with some financial help. And it's the idea that if your parents need help, and you're in a position to do it, that you help them, in spite of the feelings that you have. I'll give you one example, which is a good example. And a friend of mine has a mom that, I say this jokingly, could be in running to be the Antichrist if the Antichrist were to be a woman. Okay, just toxic is way too polite of a term to describe her. And she's that way with everybody. And she was vicious with the kids growing up. And so my friend loves his mom, but can't stand to be around her because of the hurt that comes. So mom's in a position now because of her age that she needed a little bit of help, and he was in the position to do it. And so when he was talking with me, he said, I'm going to do this. He said, I don't want to do it. I can't stand to be around my mom. The best way I can love her is to have as much distance as possible. That's how bad the lady is. He said, but I love God. And God says that I'm to honor her, to help her, to respect her, to care for her. And so I'm going to do it with as much distance as I can do. And for those of you who are super religious and you got your lives all together and your parents are perfect and you look like the Leave It to Beaver family, you hear something like that and say, oh, how immature. But in reality, that is an incredible act of spirituality, to put your feelings aside to show God you love him in treating someone who doesn't treat you well in a proper way.
Absolutely. And it's, I don't think it says in there to like your it doesn't say, obviously we are to love. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I do. I think when you take that approach and you honor them by, helping them in a time of need, just as they hopefully did as, raising you. If not, obviously, sorry for that. But I think to your point, it shows maturity. And it also, I think it's an example for others around you that, hey, despite, it goes back to even when we talk political stuff on here, despite where I'm at politically, despite where I'm at with my feelings towards you, despite some of these things, I'm still going to love and I'm still going to care the way Christ called me to care and to love and to honor. I'm still going to handle those situations the way I am called to I almost said politically, biblically, and let God take care of the rest. Doesn't mean that I have to be your best friend. Doesn't mean that I have to go, as I call him now, my dad and I, because my my dad's currently living with us in our basement as they get ready to move into their
If you
new
want to
house.
hear the deep, dark story, you call me. Oh, yeah.
As I call it.
That's why if you see tensions heavy here. then
Exactly.
I'm going to make sure it's worse.
Oh, 100%. So we, as I call it, we go on our old man walks. But, we go on an old man walk every night. And, and it's an enjoyable experience. And it's something that I have grown to really appreciate. Well, that's not a necessity. If you are in a situation, as you were saying, with a toxic parent, God doesn't call you to go on those old man walks or their old woman walks or whatever you want to call them. God just calls you to honor them, help them in times that you need. But when you do that, you are showing such an example for others around you.
Yeah, and my dad, we always didn't have a great relationship. He had, some issues earlier on, but he was a great father as far as I was concerned. Not everybody's perfect, but he did for except for Dr. Z.
They named a show after me.
He even when we got older, or when I got older, he had apologized for some of the things that he felt that he neglected. But in my honoring him, he unfortunately passed away from the results of Alzheimer's. But, in my way of honoring him, I would go and visit him, in a home. Now, when you talk to somebody that's almost in a vegetative state, a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to go and see him because it's not. But I honored my dad, and I loved him and I wanted to be there for him. Of course, I don't know what a person with Alzheimer's is thinking. So, I just wanted to make sure that, someday I hope if I'm in that position, that my son would come.
Wow.
But after all,
Keep praying.
Yeah,
Keep praying.
living in his basement, I'm pushing it. So that's why I make sure I fold his laundry and.
Yeah, exactly. But it's actually a great point. I think what you see, and I can speak from this from the outside looking into what my dad is talking about with his dad. Yeah, maybe there wasn't always that great relationship there, wasn't always that situation there, but despite all that, you still honored him, you still loved him, you still showed him the respect that God called you to do. And I think in the end, what happened was God softened his heart, right? And to your point, and on the other side of it, what did God do? He comes around and says, hey, I want to ask for forgiveness. I want to apologize for some of the things, some of the maybe toxicity that happened. Yeah, we won't say that again.
I feel very toxic.
Some of those things that happened early on in my life. And I think that probably is a result of honoring him through those times. Whereas if you were to, treat it or act in a different way, it might be a different result.
Now, fortunately, my mom, they'd gotten divorced, but my mom always made sure I was in church. And she taught me, about the Lord. And so that played a lot into it. Me and my relationship with Jesus Christ, made it easier for me to honor my parents. And so that's always, if you're looking for, really to grow your relationship, it really helps when you follow his commandments.
It's almost like he has this plan.
Exactly, yeah. It's like the stories aren't even told.
Follow his commandments, and I think not only follow his commandments, but surround yourself with people who will hold you accountable, push you into a church, much like you said your mother did, and much like I know I have been blessed enough to have around me. So when we come back, we're going to answer another question here on Simple Answers with Dr. Z.
You're listening to Simple Answers with Dr. Z, a podcast produced by New Beginnings Assembly of God in Maryland Heights, Missouri. If you have a question that you would like to have discussed by Dr. Stephen Zemanek and the team, please submit it to simpleanswerswithdrz@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. And now, here's Pastor Steve.
And welcome back to Simple Answers with Dr. Z. I'm Travis Green. Thank you again to the anonymous question asker. And the first one, we're going to go to one that's not so anonymous, and it's going to come from Tim. And Tim says this: I grew up in a church where it was an unstated requirement to dress up when going to church. Now, many churches I see have pastors and congregants wearing essentially whatever they want. What has changed? Isn't it a sign of respect to God's house to dress up for church? Once again, that comes from Tim. Pastor Steve, you want to go ahead and...
No, I don't.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
that was when I was sleeping.
Just cancel this broadcast and go to the one we did on Wednesday when we were talking
Wednesday,
about
October 3rd.
Yes.
He needs a skinny jeans.
Yes, I need my skinny jeans. I would look like a little mushroom. That's a sad reality. There's a huge culture shift, and some of it is well-intentioned. Some of it is marketing. And so I'm not here to talk about the motives, we'll just talk about what is. Because whether the motives are pure or not, that's up to the people who are doing it. I think beyond that, we need to consider what matters most. Respecting God is seen in respecting people around you. There is no way. In fact, the Bible even says, how can you say you love God that you can't see, when you can't even love the people that you do see? To which I asked that once, and a sarcastic person in the church said, it's because I can see them. If I couldn't see them, they'd be much easier to love.
So, has a point.
Yeah, well, you can't argue with brilliance. Allowing people to come to church where they are, instead of having a written or unwritten rule of, well, that shirt's not ironed, or that's not a tie, or you're not wearing a dress if you're a lady. You have to say that now. All of these things, you're showing disrespect for people who, many of which are literally there and they could barely get there. And there are a number of folks who are in church and they're not there because they love God. They're not there because they like the people. They're there because they have run out of options. And this is their last attempt at finding some hope.
Or they like their favorite suit that they can wear.
Oh, yeah, or they love the suits, yeah. I read an article this week that really infuriated me, and that doesn't happen a lot because I'm fairly easy to get along with. And I checked to make sure it was a real article and not a joke, and it was a real article. A lady wrote that she was in church, and somebody came in and went to the church, and she had bright pink hair. And the lady said, I was really upset because I went to this woman with pink hair after service. And this is her words, kindly explained to her that this is God's house and that's very disrespectful to come in wearing pink hair. And then she was upset because the lady with pink hair blew up at her and said, this is none of your business. And she ended the article with, was I wrong? And the short answer is yes,
absolutely.
You're wrong.
Absolutely.
Rather than worrying about what everybody else wears to church, and whether or not they're showing respect or a lack of respect by wearing shorts or jeans, even skinny jeans.
Why'd you look at me? These aren't skinny, I'm just fat.
I'm just trying to honor you. Rather than looking at everybody around you, Jesus said, look at the speck or the log in your own eye. Yep. What do you wear when you go to church? Do you throw jeans on because you don't give a rip? Do you wear shorts because you don't care? Or do you dress that way because you're comfortable and you're going to worship God just as well either way? Your motive and how you dress is far more important than what you wear.
I got a couple things on that. One, I think it
I
goes
totally
back.
disagree with
No,
that.
it goes back to what there's something that we've talked about in the past. It's the same concept as someone coming to church and say, "Well, I don't like the song that they worshiped in today." Well, I lost the message that we were coming to worship you,
Yes.
or entertain you, or this worship is towards God. It has nothing to do with you. But also, there's an awesome song, and I wanted to pull up the lyrics. So if you saw me typing over here, that's what I was doing.
From the Grateful Dead.
Yes,
Janis Joplin.
Matthew West, and it's called "Truth Be Told," and it says this: "There's a sign on the door that says, 'Come as you are,' but I doubt it, because if we lived like that, it was true. If we lived like it was true, every Sunday morning pew would be crowded. But didn't you say that church should look more like a hospital, a safe place for the sick, the sinner, and the scar, and the prodigals?" I've actually preached on this in our youth before, because I feel like that set of lyrics is so powerful, because it is true. Church should be more like a hospital. It should be something where, come as you are, broken, drunk, high, I don't care. Come as you are and let God fix you. I don't need you to come in your fancy clothes and make sure your hair's just right, make sure you're not disheveled, because if that was the case, I wouldn't come to church. I have 4 kids now that are under the age of 6. My hair usually looks disheveled, and you're lucky that's the only thing that looks disheveled. But I think we've lost, and I shouldn't say we've lost it, because this is always, I feel like, has been the way. But I think sometimes we lose that sense of church isn't for you.
Yeah, and that's where
it is for you, but it's not for you.
And that's when when I was younger, you always had the group of people that, when somebody would come up and get saved, by the time they got to the back door, it was like, oh, now you got to do this. You can't go. And by the time the person left, they were like ready to quit. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't live by all these rules. And so we just have to let, the Lord and the Holy Spirit deal with it, right? I mean, we can't be the ones that try to be God and play God. We have to let them guide them, read the word, pray, and then God will change our heart.
I've been in churches, and believe it or not, I've been in churches where
he doesn't need our help.
I didn't say I pay attention in churches.
Okay, but you've been
but I've been in churches. Yeah, I'm in one now.
But he's got his eyes closed. He's just spiritually
he's in another
meditating.
church.
I've been in churches where there are people in the congregation who are literally eagle-eyeing up and down the road to see if there's something going on. And I've been in a church where kids, playing air drums, not even kidding, and has had someone come up and say, "Hey, dude, let's not do that," as if it's a distraction.
Were they playing it too loud?
It's a question I didn't ask. I wish I would.
Well, they were off beat. That is an issue.
Well, knowing this person, they clap off beats. So but it's something that I looked at, and it broke my heart, because this was a young kid that they went up to, and my thought was, that kid's always going to have that in the back of his mind. He's always going to go back to that, and he's going to be the one that's telling the story and says, "Well, I stopped going to church because of." And so in the end, don't be the reason someone stops coming to church. Be the reason someone comes to church. Be the reason that they want to seek the love of God, because they see the love of God through
If I had a nickel for every time somebody said the reason I don't go to church is because somebody there hurt me with what they said.
Yep.
So as Christians, we have to, bear that responsibility not to offend somebody.
Absolutely.
No, I'm not saying let them just come into church with a beer and spill it all over the place.
That offends me.
But I think it is. Just show the love of God and let God work on it. Don't be the reason someone leaves a church. Don't just, not unless there's a good reason for it. Once again, this is Simple Answers with Dr. Z. If you're wondering, this is Season 2, Episode 1 of Season 2, Episode 10 overall. And we appreciate you sticking through Season 1 into Season 2. And if this is your first time listening, go back and listen to Season 1. Tell us that we've improved, even if we haven't.
And if this is your last time, shame on you.
Yeah, absolutely. We got the graphics up on the screen on how you can reach us. Until next time, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for listening to Simple Answers with Dr. Z. If you have a question that you would like to have discussed by Dr. Stephen Zemanek and the team, please submit it to simpleanswerswithdrz@gmail.com. As Pastor Steve likes to say, whatever you're doing today, remember this. Because of Jesus, life is good today.